Welcome to Geek Philosophy, where we love geeky wisdom. If you're new to the channel, I'm Brian, and this video is from our campaign headquarters livestream about building emotional anchors for your campaign. And in this segment, we're going to be taking a look at the first 4 episodes of Critical Role Campaign 4, the Overture, as they call it, and how story builds emotional through lines across one of the largest casts in actual play history. We'll break down the setup, the table split, and what DMs can learn about keeping a massive story connected. All right, let's get rolling. So Campaign 4 had a 4-episode overture with all of the player characters involved, which was huge because there was a big table. It's probably the biggest table I've ever seen as far as actual play campaign, 13 players involved. And so these first 4 episodes were really setting the stage and then moving into a split of that 13 player character group into 3 smaller groups that make up the story moving forward, and I'm sure we'll cross over as we go. So let's jump into talking about how this has gone so far. So when we talk about an overture, as they call it, it's really about setting the stage, right? So these first 4 episodes have been setting the stage for this campaign. It's a new campaign world. So Ahriman is, a campaign world where you've got about 70 years without the gods that have been compiled so far. So really think about that from a D&D perspective. Normally, we've got some type of mythology in place, whether you're talking Forgotten Realms or Dragonlance or, even Exandria and how they were playing and the gods that were involved there, a big part of last campaign as well. And if you have had an event where they've, especially the mortals and others, have killed the gods, then you've got some problems on your hand when it comes to the mythology of the world and what happens with an afterlife. How do you get power from these divine beings or infernal beings as you're going forward? So there's a lot going on just mechanically, how they're tying that into the story itself. But also from a story perspective, how do you connect? If you're playing a cleric, how do you connect with the fact that there are the gods that aren't there anymore? Or how do all of the other divine type inspired characters such as, Asimir, how does that play into things? So we've got a lot going on as far as world building perspective, but how it ties together from a story perspective. You start the campaign with, again, spoilers for any of you that are watching this that haven't watched it. Please go watch it first, because I'm talking about things that happened in the first 4 episodes. So kind of obvious, but I'm saying it anyway. Spoilers. So you start with the execution of a character that apparently is connected to pretty much all of the player characters, whether it's a direct connection as in a family member in the case of Hal, or others that have been working with them in the past, maybe served with them in the war. So there is a character that is dying first and foremost right off the bat, and the fallout from that is setting the stage. But then you find out as the sessions go on how everybody's connected, but not just connected from the relationship perspective, but from the plot perspective, because there was an attempt to thwart to overturn basically the execution, and it didn't work. But everybody that was involved in that and the investigation into that was really breaking off a lot of different plot points. You're also finding out more and more about the character that died. So Thiazi is someone who is beloved by many, but others maybe have been at odds with him for a long time, because maybe they were on opposite sides of a mission or a quest to find something or a chance to get a relic or all kinds of things, right? So lots going on as far as setting the stage for everything that's to come. I think from a DM's perspective, you can read a lot into this because we know it's an actual play story. We know that this is also for not just the entertainment of the players. Obviously, we watch it because we want to see how things play out. We enjoy watching others play the game. We enjoy seeing the story in a similar way that we watch a TV show or a movie or something like that, right? I think the biggest difference is with all of those things is when you're watching a movie or a play or a TV show, most of the time, the actors know the script. They know what's coming next. where these characters or these players knew what their character's background was, and maybe they knew what the original opening was going to be based on the story discussions that they had during their session 0 or their equivalent of a session 0. But what happens in the game is dependent on a lot of different improvisational choices and the roll of the dice. So they don't know what's happening yet. They're still figuring it out as they go. Even if, from a campaign story question perspective, if the DM is saying, here's what we're going to have the campaign be about, it still doesn't mean that everybody knows exactly where things are going. So again, it's more akin to improv with some dice than it is to a storyline that's been written out completely, because they're not, and you're having to see how this goes. Even if you have certain plot points that you plan as a DM, you don't know how your players are going to deal with those things and the choices they're going to make. And that's the fun of the game, right? You don't know what people are going to try to do. So the execution of Thiazi is a chain reaction of events. It starts the chain reaction of events that follow. Also, we can look backwards, and they do flashbacks. We've talked about this in our other sessions, where you can go back and role play at the table what happened during the war that you were fighting, and what happened when you were working together during that one time period that we mentioned 2 episodes ago, right? So a lot can come out of this stuff. We've got 13 characters that are either, like I mentioned, tied by family or faith, or by the rebellion itself. And what I mean by that is they were on one side or the other of the rebellion. Some of them are members of an acting troupe. Some of them are druids following the old path. Some of them are working the opposite side of the law that Thiazi did. So we've got a lot of different ways to pull all this stuff together. It's a really great way, by the way, if you're a dungeon master and you want to pull things off so that you can get everybody invested. This is an amazing way to do that. You don't have to take it and say, I'm going to copy that idea of just doing an execution of someone. No, you don't have to do that. But you could show the aftermath of a failed plot to overturn something or overthrow something, or something that didn't quite go like everybody had planned. Dealing with things that go wrong are often some of the best plot devices to keep your story going, and they're doing a great job with that so far. A lot of things have gone wrong throughout these first 4 episodes. You also can see that the world itself has legacy built into it and loss. So I immediately think of the round where they go to the new theater setup that they are putting together and revitalizing, where it used to be they were performing for the gods. Now they're really performing for themselves. And when Hal and the rest of the troupe are there and they're thinking about it, and it's just really impactful to think about, okay, these things were this way. We're making it into something else. We're taking the ruins of this tradition and making it something that is for the people that are here, and really adjusting it. And that's something that we deal with all the time in society. And being able to do that in your game immediately can start emotionally connecting with the player characters so that they have a reason to feel a certain way, whether they were on the side of the victors or the ones that fell. They have an emotional connection, and it can drive the arc forward as you're sort of playing through the game and figuring out choices. We'll talk a little bit later about how, I think the DM can help with that, but it's important to kind of think about this as we move forward. There's another big thing that's happening here, by the way. All of these, 4 episodes, all that chain reaction is leading to a split in the table. And so, this is from Critical Role themselves. I won't play the audio to this, and this is definitely their content. I just want to, they really put together a nice overview of the Overture, and I recommend you guys watch that when you get a chance. But they are now splitting, and they've announced what those tables are going to be. So we know how these tables are going to play out now. So first is the soldiers. So we've got Teor, we've got Thimble, Cadigan, Candor, and Tyranny. That's the group that are going to be at the soldiers table. Interesting mix, I think, of having them all come together. Especially, I'm really curious. Well, I'm curious about all of them, but I'm curious to see how Wick and Tyranny are going to be moving forward now that a lot was revealed about not just Wikander's background and, that he's been sort of living a lie that he didn't know he was living, that his family have been feeding him this information, and he bought into this false religion that they've been selling. Drink the Kool-Aid, so to speak. So this is a interesting twist that now that he knows this and he knows the truth about what's going on, and that they're all, harvesting this. I think it's the essence of this celestial, this angelic essence, and using that for all of the purposes that they're using. And he's taken that into himself, and that's where his power's coming from, or at least that's where his lineage of power is coming from. That's an interesting twist. It makes me think in an interesting way that his character may actually be an Osimir. And it's just it's grandfather, like just a couple generations back, rather than it being an Osimir that has some deep-rooted, through the generations type divine lineage. I think it's more of a direct lineage. Also, really interesting, and I don't know if I mentioned this during our last live stream or not, but the fact that Tyranny kind of dropped a hint, I think others have mentioned this too, I'm not the only one to pick up on this, plenty of you probably have, but she mentioned, I just got this body, meaning she just was formed in this body, and for the purpose of working directly with Wick. So that's an interesting twist to all of that too. And I love that play on something like a tiefling, even though they're just calling them, demons, and that's fine depending on how you want to do your world building and how you do your setting. But in essence, she's kind of playing a tiefling type character. And it's interesting to think that, these sort of, tyranny or what other, metaphor or actual embodiment of some type of demonic feeling or whatever, she's sort of showing that, and then her sort of being taken in by the fact that like Wikander is helping her actually learn right and wrong and good and evil and all those things. It's very interesting concept, but the fact that she said, I just had this body for this short period of time, means that the way some of these beings are brought about is different than what we've seen in other settings. So I'm digging that. And the rest as well. Like, I mean, I think this, everybody involved in this party is going to be interesting. Won't get into too much right now because we haven't seen it play out, right? Let's see how it plays in the upcoming sessions. The Seekers, we've got Octus. We'll talk about Octus. We've got Julian, Taisha, and Valus. So we'll get to Octus in a second, but Valus is someone who showed up at the funeral and was seeking this stone, right? He's seeking something that was taken apparently by Theurgy. So here's something that we're learning in these first 4 episodes that's likely going to be impacted throughout the rest of the series, right? Like the rest of the shows, because we're learning more about what he was and who he's not and all that stuff as we go. More importantly, she saw something that is just life-changing. And no pun intended. They saw a being, Octus, who had died, be brought back. And that's made a big impact on Valus, a big impact, because this is not something that should happen. We had some sort of necromantic resurrection. So he's back, no real heartbeat, likely an undead being, although his whole family is someone that is able to control, apparently, the undead, and he was able to do that in creating his little fox familiar, right? That was one of his first ventures into doing that. So now I'm curious, is he sort of in Exandria or Wildmount, and that whole setting, we had the Hollowed Ones, which had come back. It's similar to like maybe the way a Revenant is in D&D. So Revenants are beings that were brought back for a specific purpose. I don't know how it works in 2024 edition. If you guys know, let me know in the chat or the comments. But the way I understood it in previous editions, when someone's brought back, they're brought back for a specific purpose. And then they had like a year or something of being back before it goes away. And they are extremely hard to kill in the interim. Like you had to do very, very specific things to actually take them down. I don't know that this is going to be a 1-for-1. They're using that remnant type things. They're going to probably do some type of twist on it so that it feels more playable, because that's a hard character to play when you know, yeah, they may go down, but they're always going to come back up. That's a interesting twist. Maybe it is that way, and that will be fun to see how all of that plays out. But Octus is sort of an anomaly, because the other thing about having no gods around for the past 70 years, it puts in this question. In other sessions and other campaigns, you had, even if it was hard, you had divine magic or resurrection magic. You had to get the resources and you had to do a lot of different things, but we don't know how that works. This was a unique instance, and the guy came back kind of as an undead being. So it's not like if someone goes down, they're going to be able to bring this person back as easy as you would in standard rules D&D. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying, like, by the book. It seems like the book is thrown out a little bit here, and rightfully so. I do it all the time. You should change what you do at the table, and it makes it interesting, keeps us guessing, keeps the players guessing. I think it's great. Also great that Taisha is involved here. There's a connection between her and Octus throughout all of this. Sir Julian was now heavily involved in this. His father killed by Octus's family. This is a lot of conflict already baked in to the grouping. So interested. And then the final table, the schemers. And this is where you've got Hal and Azune and Murray and Bolaire, who we found out Bolaire is the mask and not the being, right? Or not the person. And, you know, transferred to another body last time through the last episode that we watched, when someone looked in the mask, looked at the sigil in the mask, and then was compelled to put the mask on. So we know that, which also means that he's been around for a long, long time. Well, the mask has been around for a long, long time. Hal and he are best friends almost. Like, they are very close. They connected well from the theater and all those other things. But Tiaji didn't really connect well with Bolaire, and actually might have been, either blackmailing him because of the secret or whatever. So there's a lot of conflict going on here based on what we find out in this overture leading up to this split. I really like the fact that they've got Azune and Murray tied in here as well. It just feels like a good split of the group. And what I'm curious about here is if at any point these three tables will also intermix, and, like, you'll have people show up apparently, that might be in the soldiers table over in the seekers table because of storyline stuff. Someone decides they're going to go visit this other person, or they need to go seek them out to let them know something, or to find something, or to do something, or to give them something, all kinds of reasons for doing that, right? But I think the split is also great to do it by theme here. So soldiers doesn't necessarily always mean just combat, though. Soldiers are representative of a lot of things. Obviously, there is combat, but there's a lot going on that is investigating, it's seeking out new information, it's battle planning, it's all kinds of things. So we don't know that necessarily it's going to be so strict soldier only is going to be a combat table. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think there's a lot more to just the name, but I think primarily these are characters that can, count on the fact that they're going to be doing some combat and some soldering, and then I think the rest as well, though, right? So seekers seem to be seeking out things, right? Seeking out truth, seeking out knowledge, seeking out the depths of information that is needed for their characters and the part of the story that they're connected with. And then the same with the schemers, really, because the schemers are really, in my mind, the ones that can help pull the strings a little bit, try to figure out what's going on, plan, use the information that might be gathered by either themselves or some of the other groups, and really put that to good use in planning. And listen, we started the whole campaign with a scheme, and a lot of these people were already involved in that scheme to try to save Theology, and it didn't work, but they were already in the middle of scheming, and there was a lot of the roguish type stuff going on. So I feel like the split by play style or story style is a good one. It's also logistics, I think. You can't just have 13 people swapping out seats all the time. It was amazing that Brennan was able to do that for 4 episodes. Really hard to do that for an entire campaign. And so I'm sure we'll get back to that at some point, where there's going to be sessions where that's just the way it works. But yeah, it's hard. And perhaps there will be times where half of the, I don't know, but half the table, or not half the table, but half of the session might be soldier, half the session might be seekers. Who knows if they need to do that, but we know that for the next one, they're starting with soldier's table. So I think it's good to kind of set that stage. From a DM's perspective, you don't need 13 players to pull off a split like this. You could, if you're running sort of a West Marches type campaign. I should back up and say, in general, West Marches campaign is kind of named after the fact that, like, in the West March style of play, you have a lot of potential players, and it was really around the DM. Let me pause. This is just one idea of it. There's a lot of people that have made variations of a West March campaign. So, but in basic terms, you had a DM who is playing. He's like, hey, or she's like, hey, here's what we've got for our table, and we're playing at this time on Saturdays or Sundays, and just let me know who can show up, and whoever's showing up will be in the game. And you can kind of communicate offline to make sure that you've got the right group, and then you play, and then the next time it might be a different configuration, and you go with it. And it's a way to make sure that you can keep the story going or keep the game going. It may be more one-shots, so it just depends on how you do it, but it's the same campaign world and the same interconnecting stories. By and large, you can do it that way. This is sort of a spin on that, where we've got separate tables that are going to be consistent. It's almost as if you had 3 different groups that you're running, and all of the story is connected. And so by starting out with this overture and then running the group this way, it's sort of like you've already got the backstory for what's happening with. You could have just started with soldier, seekers, and schemer table. They could have done that. They could have said, hey, we're going to have the adventure kickoff, and they could have been telling what happened in the overture in flashback, or as part of what they just talked about in session 0. You could have done this a lot of different ways. I'm a fan of how they did it, because it was nice to be able to play out how this all happened and see how they were able to make this configuration work with this many players. So it's really good stuff. I'm also really curious to see how long we'll spend with one group before switching to the other, whether it will be a session, switch to the next group for the next session. So, like, meaning they usually have 3 Thursdays a month that they play. Does that mean the first Thursday of the month is soldier, the second Thursday of the month is seeker, and the last is schemer? Maybe it'll be a month long of soldiers, and then another month of seekers, and then schemers. So we don't know how this is going to play out. I'm really interested to see how it all plays out, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So let me know in the chat or the comments what you think, what you would prefer if this was your table, and how you would want to handle it. But it's going to be exciting. Okay, thanks for watching, and remember, the secret to epic storytelling is keeping it personal. Cheers.